Going. Yep.
We'll try and get first part edited out. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Toby Egan, Mayor of the City of Pierz. We currently have Matt Bell, who's the Clerk of the City of Pierz, and we're very fortunate today to have State Representative Ron Kresha with us today. And this is going to be hopefully informative to everybody. And there's some things that Ron can maybe explain to you folks from the state level on where we're sitting on certain issues and how it went during the last legislative session. So thanks again for coming, Ron. Greatly appreciated.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Matt, and I appreciate it, Toby.
Absolutely.
Ron, what has been going on like at the state level the past year, and can you give us just a roundabout, on some of the things that you guys were able to get past, some of the things that you think might be good for our state, and some of the things you think might not be real good for our state, in just kind of a roundabout way?
Sure. So let me take you back a little history with the state budget. We know coming out of late 2008, the nation essentially went into a recession, and the 2008 into the 2010 session, we started to see state deficits. And in fact, 2010, we were facing a little over $6 billion deficit. And quite honestly, you just couldn't tax enough, you couldn't cut enough to get out of that. And we managed to get out of that. The legislature did a series of tax cuts, and essentially they held the line on spending. So the 2010 session really was about finding some cuts in health care, which was really climbing at the state level, as well as trying to hold everybody else harmless. In 2012, we started to see us coming out of that recession. We started to see manufacturing increasing, we started to see revenues generated, and in the early parts of 2012, we came through the 2012 session, 2013, with a surplus. And at that point, we were able to replenish the coffers of the state, and we were able to really put our state budget back on track. A lot of that came from the cutting in 2010, and a lot of that also came from some taxes that were put in 2012, and that will apply to the 2013 and 2014 budget. All of that in place. One of the things that happened, and I think this is what we have to be careful of as state legislatures, is we go in cycles. And so now we're coming out of the recession, we're starting to fill our coffers up, and now is the time that I believe that we hold back a little bit and we make sure we get our long-term care taken care of. Let's take care of our roads and bridges, and we take care of our education. Let's get those things in place so we can get our infrastructure and set some money aside, because just like we went into the recession and came out of it, we're going to go back into a downturn again. It's just the nature of the beast. We have an older population, and we're starting to see those, just like in Pierz here, you've got many farmers, you've got many business owners. They put their dues in, they put their kids through school. Now they want to retire. Now they want to take all of that hard-earned money, and they want to be able to live out the last 15, 20 years of their life in a retirement fashion, and they deserve to have that. And I believe it's our job to make sure we set that infrastructure up for them so that they can do that comfortably without putting too much of a burden on our next generation, quite frankly your age. Absolutely. And your kids. So what happens is, at the state level, legislators, they don't tend to think long term. They tend to think short term. And so what we saw was at the beginning of the 2012 session, this really big push to tax everything. We taxed at one point warehouses, we taxed telecommunications, and we taxed farmers on repair. And then we added to the income tax. All of that was in front of us, and we pulled back on it, which is good, because I didn't think we needed to be in a hurry on the taxation. And we ended up repealing the farmers repair tax, repealing the warehouse and the telecommunications tax, and we ended up with a tax on the cigarette tax and the very wealthy. There was a 9.6 increase up at the top level. Said and done, it's all over. But in all of that, we did some things that I think were a little bit what I would call rash. One of those is the energy tax. Now, one of the things, if you walk out in Pierz or Little Falls, where I live, and I used to teach in Pierz here, in this area, the one thing is you walk outside, and I don't think anybody ever says, oh my gosh, our air is absolutely polluted. And I think when we go to most of our lakes, other than aquatic invasive species, we don't really worry about the polluted waters. But we do worry about the roads and bridges, and we do worry about where our moms, dads, grandmas, and grandpas are going to stay when they retire in that long-term care. That being said, there was this really aggressive push for the energy, for renewable energy. Now, let me explain this because it gets a little bit complicated, and that is, by the year 2025, all of our investor-owned utilities, the Xcels, the Crowing Powers, all of these, they need to have 25% renewable energy. So that's pretty aggressive, but they've known about that for a while and they've been working towards that. So they've all said to us, hey, we're on track. We're going to do solar, we're going to do wind, we're going to do hydro, and we'll put in renewable energy so we can start to build other things besides the fossil fuels. This legislative session, the Democrats who are in control, and I don't want to make this a party thing, but they had they had the House, the Senate, and the governors, they pushed it a little bit harder, and they added a 1.5% solar mandate by 2020. Now, the problem with that is we added that on top of a renewable standard that was already there. So the energy companies were preparing for that, and every one of them said to us, if you add this to us and make us go out and be more aggressive on the solar, we're going to have to pass this down to our consumers. And it was such a great idea that the Iron Range was exempted from it. So the mines, the sawmills, and all the people up in the Iron Range said, hey, we'll vote for this if you exempt us. And that's what was happened. It's one of the bad things of politics, because we know that in this area we have a tremendous amount of population on fixed income. And the one thing they're watching closer than anything besides their food bills and their property taxes is probably their energy bills. And so this is going to get passed right through our municipalities, right into our consumers. So that was one of the things that I think was unnecessary, and I don't know that, like I said, when we walk outside here in our area, it's not that we don't want clean air, it's just it's not our priority, and it's not something that I think we should be taking this aggressive of steps on. We did a lot of other things, but why don't you ask me some other questions?
Yeah, I mean, if you just want to go along with, seeing as though you were on the subject of the state electrical increases, they're the mandates which cause the increases. You know, a 6%, you know, Minnesota Power had to raise their rates 6%.
Right.
Here in the city, we've been able to absorb a lot of those costs along the way, but with a 6% increase, we were looking at having to raise rates to start with, and now, you know, we end up with a 10% increase to keep up with this. Where do you envision, Ron, these fees topping out if these mandates are followed?
That's hard to say, and it's really hard to say because it all depends on the standards. And one of the things that doesn't help companies out is state legislators and federal legislators like to change. They move the ball a lot. So essentially what they've done, like in this one, they said, hey, plan for 2025, and then in the middle of that, here we are in 2014, and we throw another 1.5% on top of them. If we do that with wind or we do that with something else, they can't plan for that. So uncertainty is the hard thing for utility companies. And the other thing for people to understand is I'm all for, I have no problem with renewable energies. It's great. If you can go out and continue to develop and you want to sell that back or you want to use it personally, go right ahead. It's the one thing we don't have in Minnesota is an energy problem right now. We're moving more frac sand oil. We have more natural gas in the upper Midwest than we've ever seen. In fact, I was just at a conference right now that suggests that the United States will be one of the top producers in energy. That is not our problem. Our problem is roads, bridges, education, and long-term care. So the reason this all makes a difference is if we continue to raise rates on the renewable energy side, that's money that we're taking from you in a referendum that you have to do for the school. Or that's money that you may not be able to put towards a bonding incentive to do more roadways for your area. Or it hurts you for something that we're trying to do a lot of, which is broadband. We're trying to bring more internet speeds, especially into a place like Pierz, where we know that you've got companies that absolutely could benefit from high-speed internet, and they'll bring employees with them. So that's my whole point here is the energy crisis, we're not in the 70s anymore. Let's not make a 70s policy. Let's start looking forward to trying to get some stabilized rates and worry about roads, bridges, education.
Yeah, one of the biggest, this is the single biggest problem that our cities are facing right now is, you know, the high cost of electricity. And our community, we're considered a bedroom community, and we do have a lot of seniors, a lot of people who are on either fixed or low income folks that, I mean, even people in business right now, it's a killer,
right?
You know, because when we empty their pockets out with electrical rates, and it's like you had said, Ron, there's no room for levy and things of that nature, other infrastructure projects that the cities need as well. So it's a huge concern of mine. I know it's a huge concern of Matt's. So we're looking to do some things that hopefully work out for us with our own solar in the future. Would some type of tax credit program be possible, Ron, do you think, from your end to help absorb some of these costs for individuals and businesses?
I think so. I think we certainly could see some type of rebate program. And I'd like to gear that towards those that are on fixed income and then work our way into, you know, my generation and so forth. That would be a good start. One of the things we've got to do is stop with the renewable standards and just, I'd even repeal those. I'd back them off a bit. We're fine. We are. Our renewable energies are moving along just fine. But the other thing to add to all this, and you made a reference to this, Toby, places out here, Pierz, Royalton, Little Falls, because we're away from the cities, obviously it takes a little bit more to get these transmission lines out here. Our costs are going to be a little bit higher, and we absorb those as a community. What makes it very hard for you and for you is when we keep tinkering with the formulas at the state level, and then you guys don't know how that's going to affect you. Right. You know, you have to set your levies well ahead. You have to set your budgets, and you're always guessing, what are we going to do to you? That's one of the things that I think we have to be very conscious of as rural legislators, because in the cities, that's not necessarily the case, because you have so much business to absorb these costs, whereas here, we're land heavy, but we're not industry heavy. So all of these costs get absorbed through property taxes and levy fees. So we have to be very, very careful of, it's almost a rural disincentive. It's this idea that because I live out in the rural area and there's more land and less business, I'm going to pay a multiple higher than down in the cities. And a lot of times my fellow colleagues down in the metro they just don't realize that. They think, oh, you know, I live in this apartment, of course we should have renewable energy. But what they don't realize is you're living in a 2,000 square foot apartment, maybe 1,500 square foot apartment. Someone else up here, you've moved to your 5-acre farm that you've always wanted to live on, and it suddenly became very, very expensive to you. And so those are things that we have to be careful of. And I'll mention another thing. I came from, actually I stopped by the seniors. I was talking to seniors for a minute, and one of them asked me about propane. Okay. You know, what happened with the propane? Well, the propane problem that we felt in this last winter came because not that we didn't have enough propane, it was simply that we couldn't get it here fast enough. We had kind of a perfect storm where the farmers were drying their crops as fast as they could, and then severe heat hit. And at the same time, we're moving all of this frac sand oil out of the state in rail cars. Well, when we needed to get the propane up here quickly, there's no pipeline that we could turn to because we had one of them that was shut down for maintenance, and we haven't approved things like the Keystone. If we could get a lot of this oil to these pipelines, we could turn these rail cars faster to get things back up into our area. So our real problem on the propane was our infrastructure is not able to handle it. And the solution to that is we need to get some more storage tanks up here, and we need to start moving propane up here quicker so that we don't have these problems.
So Ron, do you think, one thing I noticed, I mean with the shortage, obviously with the demand the price goes up, but the price went up so ridiculously high. Do you feel that there was you know, some price gouging or things of that nature that was going on in order to drive that price that extremely high?
I've looked closely. I don't necessarily think there was a lot of intentional price gouging, and here's why. Here's one of the things that I didn't realize. Mall of America, when they get their gas, natural gas. What I didn't realize is when they hit a certain price point of natural gas, they kick over to propane. So what happens is when the Mall of America gets to a price point natural gas, when the temperature gets cold enough, the natural gas gets up, they start buying propane because it's cheaper. Here's the problem. All of our propane supply was going to Mall of America first, and, because they needed so much, and that was being deviated from getting up to our area. So we're actually going to, one of the laws that I'd like to put in place, or one of the things is say, fine, if places like Mall of America want to do that, which I understand the cost savings, but you've got to buy in advance and store it so you don't drain, and that's what was happening. So you've got all these big facilities that were draining propane faster than our ag users could get to it. So if you think about that, now if I'm selling propane and Mall of America is suddenly buying a ton of it, the price is going to go up. So that's why, you know, because I did look into it. I'm like, is there a lot of price gouging?
Yeah.
No, the fact of the matter is we have big facilities that when it got so cold, they just sucked all that propane out of the, yeah, it's amazing.
I would have never thought
no,
that.
I didn't either until we
Never
looked
would
into
have
it.
even guessed it. Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Ron, how do you think the new minimum wage requirements that were set down on the federal level are going to affect some of our small businesses, some of our medium to size businesses, things of that nature?
What I can see in this area, and the state of Minnesota raised the minimum wage starting in August. They're going to go up to $8, and then we'll be on our way to $9.50 by 2015. Fine, if we're going to do that, that's fine. It honestly hurts the restaurants in our area. We know that. They've said it time and time again. There's no tip credit on it. So we know the hospitality, the tourism folks, this is going to be something that's going to hurt them. The other side of this is we know that there's a lot of 16, 17, 18-year-olds. I have one in my house that are going to do very well. And I guess that's fine. I think we could have targeted this a little better. I think through some tax incentives we could have said, you know, if you're a 16-year-old, you don't need this wage. My daughter, quite honestly, if she needs more money, she knows where the bank of dad is, she's going to get the money. But the problem is she's taking that minimum wage, she's taking it out of a single mother, or she's taking it out of somebody that could really use that. So that's one of the problems I have with the minimum wage. I think we're savvy enough to where we could target that better. The other problem that I have with the minimum wage is it doesn't solve our issue of high-paying jobs. IWCO is still trying to hire. They can hire, last time I heard they were trying to hire about 100 people at $11 an hour with benefits. So obviously minimum wage jobs aren't our issue around here because they can't fill their jobs. Our real problem is we don't have young people that are going off to school from high school and coming back with high-paying skills. The welders, the electricians, you know, those skills are just going away. And what we're finding is that's where we're really in need. And minimum wage isn't going to fix that. Well, in order to fix that, we've got to get young men and women to start businesses in these areas. You know, people like your age, Matt, your class of people out there, they've got to come back here and they've got to start these businesses. Right. It's that 5-person business that's run by a 25 to 35-year-old that really starts to make a difference. And they don't hire people minimum wage. They hire them at a decent wage, usually with benefits. So I understand the intentions of the minimum wage. I think it hurt our rural areas more. But more importantly, I think we could have taken that passion and that drive to bring in wages and instead try to bring in some higher wage skills to our area.
Very good. Thanks, Ron. One question that's kind of on my mind that you hear most every day in the news, MNsure. Yeah. Problems with MNsure, problems with MNsure.
Yeah.
From your end, Ron,
sure.
What are you seeing?
The website has been terrible. It's probably, I won't even say probably, it is, since MNsure launched, that is the single biggest thing I deal with. And before MNsure, I would have people that would call me and say, hey, I'm trying to get health benefits, and we'd help them through Minnesota Care. After MNsure lost, no lie, that the biggest complaint I hit is our insurance was canceled, we had coverage, and then we had a kid, and now we have to go back through and do paperwork. And so it's been really a dismal failure on the website. Now, has there been some people that have gotten some help? Absolutely. When a large percent, like 80%, go through and they're paid for by the state, yeah, they're going to have some benefits. And I'm glad that we needed to address some health issues there. But as a government program, it's still very wobbly. It's just not working very well, and we have to get. I think they're working on it, but it's going to cost more money. And here's my big concern with it. how much money is it going to cost us to get all this up and running when we've also got roads, bridges, and long-term care to deal with?
Yep. Where do you cut your loss?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, running the city, you've only got so many dollars coming in,
Yeah, exactly.
and you can't help everybody.
No.
As much as Pierz, I'm sure you would love to give as many services as you can. You have to draw a line.
You have to do with what you got. Yep.
And my fear is that we're gonna run this cost of healthcare so high that it's gonna be this really big albatross that we're sitting in the budget. Not that not that we can't handle healthcare and health coverage. We need to do that. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I think we could have done it a better way than what we did.
Yep.
And there's a couple of ways we could have done that. For example, Minnesota Care was working pretty well, and we had about 117,000 people that were uninsured in the state of Minnesota. If we would have just figured out why they were uninsured and expanded our standards to cover them, we probably could have done them much, much cheaper than $160 million.
Right.
And not had to launch the website. I was just down at a conference now, and the Canadians, we were talking to the Canadians about their health insurance, and they love the universal aspect of it, but what they really don't like is the rationing. The fact that if I've had one surgery and I keep getting older, you get longer and longer out until you get your knee replaced or your hip. So as we get closer and closer to rationing health insurance, it's just going to be more and more of a problem.
Yeah, hopefully it never comes to that point, but yeah, I definitely see some future problems with that, and hopefully the state legislature stays on top of that and tries to curb some of that. I don't know if there is going to be a way or not, but I think you're right, and I think that everybody is going to see that coming. But are we going to be able to deal with it? I guess that's a problem.
And I think the best, in all honesty, the only way we're going to be able to deal with the health insurance is we're going to have to just get some very smart people, and they're down there, go lock them in the room and say, I don't care if you're Republican, I don't care if you're Democrat, here's a spreadsheet. Come out with a solution. We're not all going to like it, but let's keep our costs down and let's make this work, and not just start driving things based on political agendas.
Yeah.
That's what gets us in trouble.
Do you see the expenditures that are being spent now for MNsure? Do you find that program is going to be far superior to MnCare?
Well, let's hope that MnCare is going to be absorbed into MNsure.
Okay.
So MnCare is going away, and all this is coming in here.
Coming in together.
Yeah. So I have my doubts, but we'll see.
Right. Well, anything's possible, but like you said, how much do you want to spend?
Yeah, and we know. I mean, 5 years from now, we'll probably look back, and this has been a really bumpy road. The question is, how much does it cost us? We'll get there. It's just how much is it going to cost us?
I mean, because one of the concerns I have about government health care in general is obviously the quality.
Right.
And I guess right now, if you look at the overall picture, right now insurance companies are pretty much dictating the care you're going to get to start with. What happens when that transforms into government making those decisions as well? And where is that line drawn? And I know that you have the right to go see your own doctor for certain things, or for whatever you want, I guess. But the treatments that you get and things of that nature right now are dictated by the insurance companies.
Right.
And so I mean there is an obvious problem with healthcare that needs to be addressed just from the insurance company point of view, and with the state now. I know that's going to be a very complicated thing coming up for you guys to have to deal in the future. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
hopefully it goes well.
And one of the things, going all the way back to when we kicked the British back to their island, the one thing I find about this country is we don't like to be told what to do. Right?
No.
We really don't. There's a reason we live here. There's a reason we work hard. We want to be able to control our own fate. You look at that, and you look at the VA system, and you start to realize how long before our general population gets to be to a point where you go to a waiting room and you all sit on a bench and somebody's choosing your health care for you. That worries me. I certainly feel for the veterans, and I want to make sure that we fix that veterans plan for them and take care of them.
Yes.
But that's growing so big now, and that worries me because I think that's what we're going to see across the board for health care. There's a lot there. You're absolutely right. I mean, these are going to be some big decisions that we're going to have to face down.
Very good. Ron, what do you see in the nature of tax increases coming up in the near future, maybe
Sure.
the next legislative session?
It's really a math problem, and it comes down to this: if our biggest problem coming up right now is roads, bridges, and water treatment. That's it. When you look at that, if we can't fix those fast enough, we're going to be in trouble as a state. Now, if we can prioritize that, we should be fine. But we also have education, long-term care, health care, renewable energy, all these other wants that everybody wants. And if we can hold those off for a bit and say, listen, roads, bridges, and let's take care of the infrastructure first, we'll be okay. We won't have to raise taxes. If we try to do roads, bridges, water treatment, and everything else, our only option is a tax increase, and that's not something I would favor. I think we're actually fine in our other areas with little bits of tweaks. There are some areas that we can actually cut government back. Like, for example, this last legislative session, I'm sure it'll help us out. We gave free voicemail to over 100 felons. Because the idea is that when 100,000 felons, when you get out of jail and you go look for a job, they can't get a hold of you, right? So you have to have a cell phone. Well, we're paying for that now. So, yeah, I know, it seems ridiculous, but I look at this and I go, really? You know, I just drove over 10 potholes to get here, and he's got a cell phone?
Using it for work purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. But
yeah.
It really comes down to a prioritization. I like I said, I came back from a legislative conference. I was down talking to Omaha, Iowa, and Kansas and South Dakota, and frankly, those guys are laughing at us because they say, we don't compete with you guys for jobs because we know how high your taxes are. So if we don't recognize that Omaha is sucking a lot of these companies away from
South
us.
Dakota.
And South Dakota.
Yep.
You know, we have to recognize that. I think if we could really get on the cutting edge and competitive side of our infrastructure with our, like I said, our roads, bridges, and our water treatment, we could hold our taxes back and we could be a very competitive state. It's not that we're not doing well now, but we do have this little problem that comes in December and doesn't go away till May, right? And that's a horrible cold.
And it really is surprising to me, as well as we are doing, when you consider what it costs business to do business in the state of Minnesota versus South Dakota or Iowa or other places. So, I'm very surprised that we're doing as well as we are, and yeah, it's something that probably will catch up with us in the future if we don't decide to do something with that. And
our economy is moving, which is great. We're seeing some businesses move in. We're seeing some leave. Of course, you know, some large ones down in the cities have left. So we have to recognize that they're coming and going. But here's the thing I keep asking myself. If there's businesses coming here with all these hurdles, think of how many more would come if we'd remove a couple more hurdles.
Exactly.
So,
well, Ron, I don't know if Matt, you have any questions?
I just kind of had, you know, some just informational things, I guess. Anything from, you know, what goes on maybe like a day-to-day basis with you or anything, maybe if you could explain to some people. And then also, too, you mentioned with the healthcare, is it being looked into where there's other ways to keep those costs down? I know Minnesotans are some of the most active people in the United States. Our education is good. Education ties into healthcare to some extent. It's proven that people with higher educations have lower rates of obesity, lower rates of health problems. Are things like that being looked at as well, just as besides the initial cost of a program like we're trying to offer, to kind of hedge that into the future?
And then there's a combination of all those factors, and certainly as individuals make better health choices, that's going to help their cost. One of the things we have to realize, though, is we can't keep just taking everybody in and give them everything. There's going to come, I mean, my days of running cross country are probably over, so I probably don't need, you know, all the prosthetics and knees that are going to get me to be a runner again.
You could always be a wrestler.
So you know, those are some decisions that are going to have to come. One of the other things I believe we're going to have to get rid of is some of the regulations on, like, the pharmaceuticals. You know, we have people going up to Canada to buy their drugs. That's very high for our health costs. And one of the other things we don't do well, which is transparency. If you go in for a procedure in Little Falls, you don't know what your cost is going to be, nor do you know what it is in St. Cloud. And I should be able to pick up the phone just like I'm getting a starter in my car and say, how much is it for me to do this procedure? And they should tell me. So there's some transparency that I think will bring the price down that would help. Let's see, what else? You had a bunch of other things in there.
Just on like day-to-day things,
Oh, sure.
maybe, or whatever you would
Sure.
encounter and stuff. I mean, do you find it hard to work with, you know, the other sides of the party, or you know, things of that
Sure.
nature? I'm sure, but
The media loves to make us out to hate each other. Here's the fact of the matter. I've been in business. I've been around education. If somebody were to call me, and I've had a couple calls even from Pierz or so, and someone were to say, I need to get this done, my response is never, I'm a Republican, I won't do that.
Right.
My response is, let me go figure out how to get this done. And there have been many times when I've gone over to my Democratic colleagues and said, okay, I know this is close to your district, it's close to my district, how do we get this done? And I think your better legislators, and we have some really good ones down there, they're the ones that are not afraid to cross party lines and say, listen, I've got a problem, I need it fixed. We can fight later in the media if you want to, but today, let's, and they're really, we do a lot of that. The media loves a good story, and they love to make us out like we hate each other. But I'll tell you what, if I've got a city that's got a failing sewer system, I can find support. I'll give a good example is Rock County in Laverne. They needed some water, and we banded all together, and we've got a pipeline coming in from Missouri because they're literally running out of water. You know, so we get things like that. You know, day-to-day stuff, really a day-to-day, we're talking to each other, we're trying to work solutions out, but it's politics, and everybody likes, you know, when Dancing with the Stars isn't on, maybe there's something on Fox News.
do you find that even working with people in your own party as far as getting funding outstate versus metro, you know, is there a lot of clashing as far as that goes? Because I know there's a lot of funding that can go on outstate as well, and I think that gets overlooked quite a bit. What kind of job are you doing down there to kind of bring things together and get some funding out here?
One of the big problems we face is education.
Okay.
For example, the Twin Cities schools are going to get 12 to 13,000 per student. We're going to get 9,600.
Right.
That's a huge disparity, and the reason that's a big problem, and right to your point, is some people, my Metro Republicans, you know, they don't want to raise any more taxes. And I'm saying, wait a second, you've got to either fix the formula or your folks are going to have to pay a little more because mine are paying a lot. Right. So there's a big battle there. But what people don't recognize is when Pierz School District goes for a levy referendum, there's less people out here to pay that referendum and less businesses.
Very true.
Down in the cities, the businesses bear the brunt of it. So as a homeowner, it could be pennies in the dollars, whereas up here, it'll be, you know, 75 cents to $1, and that is our big, and that's the way that the education is set up right now. Is as everybody says, hey, if you want more money for your schools, just go out and borrow it from your local taxpayers, just levy them. Well, that doesn't work so well out here.
Right.
It works great in the cities when the businesses pay their share, but out here we just don't have the business base.
Yeah, and the tax base is spread out
Absolutely.
so much, and here we don't have that. And I know I've checked property values and versus taxes here within the city versus some of the more expensive areas in the metro, the Edinas, you know, some of the Plymouth places like that, in the well-to-do areas, and you know, valuation per tax that they're paying is incredibly lower than what we're paying.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and yeah, you look at that and you go, wow, it's expensive to live in a small town or a small community.
Well, and one of the really big problems we're going to see, probably not in 14, but in 15, because I see it in other parts of the country, is the agriculture valuation is going to skyrocket, and our farmers are going to be paying an incredible amount for their land, and we're going to have to see what we can do to address that, because it's just it's going to be high. I mean, we're just seeing those property valuations so fast all the way up from Nebraska all the way through South Dakota, the southern part of the state. It's just amazing. So that's one of the things that I'm watching closely is our agriculture land valuations, because that's going to drive their costs quite a bit.
Well, Ron, we really appreciate you coming down. I know you're a busy man, and you've got an appointment to the west of us sometime this afternoon.
Yeah, actually,
I really appreciate you coming down and explaining to our residents what's going on from a state level, and you can hear some of our concerns, and we appreciate everything you're doing for us down at the state. Absolutely, and I'm actually going to give you my cell phone number. I'll give it to you a couple times. People can call me anytime, and I get lots of calls. I'm glad. But my number is 320-761-6133.
And again, that's 320-761-6133, and use it. That's what it's there for. Call me anytime. If I'm at a ball game or something, I'll let it go to voicemail, but I'll get back to you. So
Very good.
absolutely, thank you
again for coming, Ron.
Yes, thanks, guys.
Appreciate your time. Thank you
very much.